Bitcoin has seen some volatility in the last 24 hours or so, and in today's video we are going to be jumping into the technical analysis for BTC, sharing my thoughts and opinions on where I think that price action is heading. Let's roll the intro and then get right down into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Bitcoin video update. We're going to try to do something slightly different here in the technical analysis video. We're going to split this into 3 sections and I'll try to timestamp it all down below for you. We're going to start with the 1 hour time frame, progress to the 4 hour time frame, and then take a look at the daily time frame at the end there. All the pairings will be on a USDT and we are going to be using Binance as our data source. So let's start right here. This is the 1 hour time frame. These are the real small micro movements for BTC's price action. And as you can kind of see, we have started a bit of a move to the downside in the last kind of 24 hours or so. And I'm going to draw a trend line on here just to kind of show you what that looks like. You can see here we have this downward trend line. We can also see that if I'd put in a lower end trend line, that actually this is more like a megaphone pattern, decreasing and actually expanding to the downside. Okay. Now from our kind of moves here, unfortunately on the 1 hour time frame, it still does look a little bit on the bearish side. We can see that the stochastic RSI is quite high. If I throw on the divergence indicator and just remove the stochastics here, you can see that it was a bullish divergence and the RSI has moved up quite a bit now, again in line with this most recent move. So I'm not confident on thinking that there's a prolonged move to the upside. I'd love that to be the case, but I think we're going to see a bit of a correction here on the 1 hour time frame before we progress to the upside. Now we can also note that we have the blue line coming through here. This is the 50 EMA, the exponential moving average. And this is an area that's actually being quite difficult for Bitcoin's price action to close above on the 1 hour time frame for quite some time. Once we kind of get below these areas, you can see how it becomes quite a lot of resistance for Bitcoin. The occasional move to the upside, but it's not sustained. And we are finding that this is resistance for us right now. This is at the point of recording $64,629. Above that, we have the yellow line coming through here. This is the 50 simple moving average. Okay, and again, you can see where this turns into support and where this has historically been a bit of resistance as well. Very similar to the exponential moving average, it works as support and resistance, and we can find that both of these are acting as resistance right now for BTC. So we want to be a little bit aware of that. And of course, the white line coming through here is the 200 exponential moving average, and that is an indication of your trend filter. When you're below this, you're bearish, and when you're above it, you should be bullish, right? Occasionally you get these fake outs, which we were talking about the other day, but for the most part you can see here that the 200 EMA has been heavy resistance. Once it becomes resistance and you test it and you find big moves to the downside. So we are going to be looking for the Bitcoin price action to try to rally up above the 200 EMA at some point, currently set at $66,108 on the 1 hour time frame. So what's going on? Well, we obviously are in a bit of a bearish position with the stochastic RSI being as high as it is, with the price action currently being below the 200 EMA, the 50 SMA and the 50 EMA. The bulls are going to want to try to close the price above first the 50 EMA, which is where it's fighting right now, and then a closed position above the 50 SMA, and of course trying to get a good position above that 200 EMA. I think on the larger time frames, which we'll get to later, we have a possibility for this, but on the smaller time frame for now, we're actually looking for more of a move to the downside. So let's go ahead and take a look. Throwing on our Fibonacci retracement tools, how much higher can we push here before we actually start to see, some kind of correction to the downside? Well, taking a look at it and bearing in mind this candle wick just here is at 63,000 exactly. If I adjust our Fibonacci retracement tool here to marry up with our low point here of essentially $63,000, which if I can just try and move that up, that's going to show us where our target range is likely to be, approximately right in this little range right here. between 65,140 and 65,655. Let me show you with a yellow box being drawn on right here. Okay, and I'm going to remove the Fibonacci tool so you can see this little yellow box. So what I'm saying, guys, is like from a three-wave point of view, we have this correction to the upside finishing probably just above that 50 SMA. Now, closing above that area could be decent, but I imagine that it's just going to be a wick up into this range, basically between 65,000 and 65,139 and 65,650, right in this little range. Once that's complete, I imagine this is where we then start to see that next correction to the downside. Okay, so we want to be quite mindful over what all of that might mean, but we are looking for a small move upwards and then a bit more of a collapse to the downside. Minimum expectations have already been met for this move to the upside, so we don't have to continue running even higher. Essentially, we can reject from here, although typically we would move up a little bit more towards that yellow box area. It doesn't mean that we have to. There's no guarantees in this space. Our minimum expectations were met when the price surpassed this area here of $64,374. Okay, so that's your 1 hour time frame. Expect some volatility. Let's move this up and crank it up to the 4 hour time frame. On the 4 hour time frame, guys, we are, of course, looking slightly differently. We have our 200 EMA on the 4 hour time frame coming in here at the $62,640. And this has acted as support. So like I was saying earlier on the smaller time frames, when the price action is below the 200 EMA, we are bearish. And when the price action is above the 200 EMA, we are bullish, right? And so in this particular case here, although we had a couple of fake outs where we did close below the 200 EMA, we closed immediately a few candlesticks later above that 200 EMA, turning it into support. We've tested this yet again, and we're still finding that the 200 EMA is support. This is giving the bulls a bit more room to the upside, a bit more confidence in the space. We are, of course, still setting the lower highs and the lower lows. All of these things are still remaining true. And on the 1 hour time frame, we are expecting volatility. The price action is still below the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA, the light blue line and the yellow line here on the 4 hour time frame. These are both kind of coming in at roughly 66,000 and 66,180. So EMA being the lower number at 66,000, and the yellow line, the simple moving average, 66,180, right? So we know that the price is sandwiched between the two, finding support on the 200 EMA and finding resistance on the 50 SMA. So over the weekend, I expect us to continue this kind of area of bouncing between the two until we get a breakout situation. I say this quite often, higher highs and higher lows actually tends to have a bigger chance on probability of a move to the downside. And lower highs and lower lows has a tendency to want to break out. We can argue that we've kind of had a little bit of a mini break to the upside here. And this correction that we're seeing coming down to the 200 EMA is actually still looking very, very tidy. Okay, so I think this is a correction, a healthy correction before we have another surge to the upside. Obviously, our thoughts still remain that we are looking for $75,000 to $80,000 on a significant surge to the upside before we see a more significant correction to the downside. At the moment, support is being found on that 200 EMA, and it gives me a lot of confidence for BTC. Now, as we kind of put our Fibonacci retracement tools on, we can see that we do have the ability for Bitcoin to have a continued breakout to the upside, looking for the $69,900 to $71,800 range under, again, a three-wave correction pattern to the upside. Our minimum expectations on this, let me actually put that back, accidentally deleting everything there. So our three-wave correction here, our minimum expectations would happen right up here. I'm going to go ahead and just repurpose this line at 68,240. Okay, so that's going to be where our minimum expectations kind of come on in. We are going to be looking for closures above the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA. That's going to be a good potential breakout trade, right? So if I was to go long, I would be looking for that breakout opportunity there. and target out that yellow box that we were just talking about, up at that range between 69,900 and 71,800, and the risk reward ratio would be approximately 3.7%. 3.7, basically meaning that you get $3.70 for every $1 of risk that you put up. Now, of course, if I am to be leverage-based trading, I'm going to be trading on BitGet. BitGet is my go-to platform when it comes to leverage-based trades. It's an easy-to-use platform, in my opinion, very self-intuitive, and there isn't a link to BitGet in the description down below if you haven't yet signed up. And if you haven't yet signed up to BitGet, using that link in the description below, you could be eligible for up to $30,000 of rewards and bonuses, depending on how much you trade and deposit on the platform. It's important to note that not all countries and jurisdictions are eligible, and there are other terms and conditions that do apply. So do go ahead and check out their website for further details on that if you are interested. So when it comes to the 4-hour time frame, we are still looking for progression to the upside. You can see here on the stochastic RSI, we still have plenty of room and plenty of growth to the upside. But again, I'm still expecting volatility, as we need to see a little bit more of a correction on the smaller timeframes. If we take the stochastics off and we throw in the divergence indicator here, you can see that there was some bearish divergences. This was occurring as we were kind of getting rejected on that 50 simple moving average. Other than that, nothing else to really declare from the volume point of view. So I'm quite happy to see how this one is going at the moment. I still see this one with progression to the upside, and we have that potential for a trade idea here, like we were talking about yesterday with the move to the downside. So yeah, for now, good support being found on the 200 EMA, and we are probably going to still find resistance on the 50 SMA and 50 EMA until we kind of get that breakout situation where we do target out that slightly higher range. So let's roll this up into the daily time frame. The daily time frame has been an interesting one for quite some time. We have obviously had a significant push to the upside, and for the most part, our 50 EMAs and SMAs and 200 EMAs are all in very bullish positions. We haven't come back down and fully tested out the 50 EMA just yet. That's currently coming in at 59,600. I do see us finding support on these, but if we were to lose them, I would start to feel a little bit more bearish, heading more towards the 200 EMA, currently coming in at 45,166. So until we actually find ourselves here with a reason to kind of be bearish on this one, we can still remain bullish, okay? So obviously, we've had a lot of target ranges, lots of breakouts, lots of stuff happening in the Bitcoin past here. And we obviously did hit our previous daily target highs between the 71,596 and 76,000. This correction I still see as a potential breakout for a move to the upside. So we are going to still be looking at $75,000 to $80,000. The things that would change my mind on this, well, if we were to start to lose the low that we had over here at the, let me actually go ahead and tidy out some of these lines just so that I don't have to have them all on here. I'm going to make this a little bit easier to see. Let me just get rid of some of that. Right. So down here, it's $59,005, right? If we were to come down lower than this, that's going to break the structure that would take us out to that $75,000 to $80,000. So if we were to see the price come down lower than 59,000, then of course, yeah, we're not likely to see the high. And I would actually be more inclined to start thinking about 45 as that starts to move us down towards the 200 EMA. But again, like I said earlier on the smaller timeframes, as long as we remain above the 200 daily EMA, our trend filter, we remain in an upward trend and in a bullish state of play. This basically means that unless we close below that 200 EMA, we should kind of remain in a pretty much a bullish movements. And these are all just minor corrections that we're experiencing for BTC. The current price corrections that we have seen for Bitcoin might be scary for newcomers at 17.62%, but this is actually really, really tame. We have seen many corrections so far on this daily time frame, one down here at 21% between the 11th of January and the 23rd of January as an example. 17%, 20%, these are all the kind of numbers and the kind of corrections that we saw in 2021 and are approximately half of the corrections that we saw in 2017. Both of those bullish markets, we saw very decent corrections, and more so in 2017, with 35 to 40% corrections being very common. In 2021, we saw more around the 20% correction being quite common, and here in 2024, we're seeing these kind of 20 to 17% corrections at the moment. Ultimately, ultimately, I do expect to see more volatility with the Bitcoin spot ETF potentially now being one of the major players for the Bitcoin volatility, i.e. if the stock market gets spooked, we're likely to see a significant downturn in BTC's price action. Likewise, if the continuation of the Bitcoin spot ETF performing well, we could continue to see a significant surge to the upside. So I think it's quite safe to say at this point that Bitcoin is now more of a stock market correlated asset than it has ever been in the past. So for Bitcoin's price action on the daily here, looking at how this has kind of performed, I still say that we have a little bit more potential to the downside, but hopefully we can remain above the 59K. If that is the case, then we still target out 75 to 80 before our next major correction for BTC. So guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have found it useful, smash the like button. If you're new, why don't you subscribe? Stay up to date with all of the content that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. And don't forget to join us down in Discord. The link for that is in the description below. And guys, why don't you check out this video right here where there's some interesting information that you must know.